Hey y'all, Tim here, and in this episode of My Biz Needs Help, we're going to cover the basics of business insurance with this man right over here. So let's do the thing.
My biz needs help. Transition time.
How's it going, guys? Timothy D. Craighead here, the founder and creative education officer for the National Association for the Advancement of Small Business Innovation, or NASB for short. This is going to be cool. So outside of the normal things that we do with the show, sometimes we break it up and do some things that are a little bit different. And this is one of the different things. We had a question that came in from the WISE community, which I highly recommend that you join at nasb.com/group. And let me actually put that on the screen because you guys love screen stuff. So let's clean that up and let's go nasbi.com/group. And if you happen to be on the podcast directories, of course, you can check the description, the notes, the show notes, the description, whatever it's called, to get the link. But of course, if you're on YouTube, you see I just drew it on the screen. Let's clean that up. Now, so let's do some actual introduction stuff. So I have had my experience with business insurance, but I wanted to bring in someone that has more experience than me. In fact, comes from a much different perspective than me. And also is a part of the WISE community. Boom, boom, boom. He is an attorney by trade, but also a serial entrepreneur. And his words exactly, he's a freedom fighter. So that I love, 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 love. This makes me feel like I'm back on radio. This is fun. I need to do this more. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to my good friend Thomas H. Clifton. Thomas, how you doing?
I'm doing good, my brother. What's up?
Man, everything and nothing at all.
And that's what's up.
And that's what's up. So, like I said, this question came in from the community, from one of our members who learned that their business might end up needing to have some type of business insurance because, of course, there's policies for everything. So we found this really cool list on thehartford.com, which you're hopefully seeing right now on the screen. If you're in the podcast directories, excuse me, you can just follow along. And of course, if you want to, you can go to YouTube and you can see it for yourself. But they had a really good article on their site talking about the 11 types of insurance needed for small business. Before we get into the list, I kind of just want to have a quick little convo. From your perspective, Thomas, like you've seen what insurance is and how it actually works and all of that. Like, do you feel that there's a value depending on the type of business that you're doing, that insurance is a must or a should be, or it could be like what's your perspective?
Well, first and foremost, let me do this. I am a practicing attorney in the state of North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina only. Here, it's strongly suggested and almost required in most instances that attorneys carry malpractice insurance. Mm-hmm. So right off the gate, that's the first thing for me, because it's the practice of law, not the science. Mistakes get made, laws get updated, things change. And before you know it, you could find yourself in a situation where you're liable for somebody's damages. And so that malpractice insurance is a way of covering, one, to make sure that you can cover the expenses that they've incurred, but also to protect you and to protect your personal assets and your business itself. So right off the gate, that's the first thing for me. My perspective on insurance is this: get some damn insurance. Straight up. You cannot afford to operate a business without it. I'd looked at the list with you, and I think we kind of went through that preliminarily, and I'm just rattling off. And again, I'm an attorney, but I sit down with my insurance agent on a regular basis to discuss what my needs are. Right. And I love the fact that with him, what he'll do is anticipate what I need before I even realize it. So he schooled me on some things. Having employees, I carry workers' comp insurance, obviously, because if something happens to my employees during the course of working for me, it's already been determined that I'm going to be responsible for that. So I have to
Right.
make sure that I can compensate them or have a policy in place to compensate them for that. And if I don't, the state of North Carolina will penalize me for not. So my advice, and I think it's a very wise thing for anyone to join the wise community. I'm in the wise community, and you see what you're getting. My thing is to share with you guys, just from personal experience more than anything else, is that there have been some times I had to reach out and call my malpractice insurer for advice. There were some times when I thought I was scared that I'd made a mistake, and thank God they had a team of professionals on staff that could walk me through a situation to make sure that I mitigated any risk or any damage. So from that standpoint, I strongly, strongly recommend that you sit down with your insurance agent or representative and get an assessment, get a consultation with them, and let them guide you on what type of policies and plans you need to have in place.
Cool. So before we get into this list, I just want to kind of throw a little story for those that are watching and listening for my experience with insurances. In my case, since my business runs solely on the internet, there's disclaimers and liabilities that come into play that's specific for online entities. But I did end up working with a client that had me have a policy for courses that we created for the client. It's depending on the type of industry that you're in. There may be special circumstances where you, as a product producer, service provider, will need something specific just to work with anyone. And this was a policy where I think I might have paid $500 for the year. And it covered, I think, up to $10 million in potential damages if anything were to happen for anything that we created with this particular entity. The funny thing about this that I learned was outside of the fact that you never know when you're going to need a policy, having one in place is a good thing. But the other thing is, in my early stages of being an online entrepreneur, I always feared the whole thing of dealing with insurance companies, right? Because everything's always so scary when you hear insurance, and it's like, then you're like, oh man, I got to get insurances for my business. But then you realize that one, it's not that expensive depending on what you're doing. Two, it's peace of mind. And that is something that's immeasurable. And you never know when, like you're saying for your state, when someone might put up a claim. And good advice on the whole thing of checking with your state. I would even say check on your county too.
Yeah, your jurisdiction. That's right.
Yep. So because if there are any particular type of statutes that says, you may need a policy because of what you're doing, then of course you'll be able to do that. I know definitely like brick and mortars have to, but my experience mostly is with online. So, your mileage may vary. So, ready to do this list and see what we discover?
Let's get into it.
All right. So the first one that comes up as the most common insurance for small businesses is general liability insurance. And according to the article, this is the way it's described. General liability insurance helps protect your business from claims that claims that it caused bodily injury or property damage to someone else. For example, if a customer slips in your store, the coverage can help pay for their medical expenses. Many small business owners also get a general liability insurance policy that includes product liability insurance. This can help protect their company from claims of bodily injury or property damage that their product causes. So, again, I'm not in the whole thing of the brick and mortar frame, but you have an office.
Yes, sir. I own a
Right.
building.
Yeah. So how does this play out?
I carry general liability insurance for my building. And I also insure individually for myself, just in case, as the owner of the building
Hmm.
and for the law firm, as a way of just hedging my bets, just making sure that there is no gap, there is coverage there. Because
Yeah.
again, any defects in your property, it could be something as simple as snow being in front of your office. You didn't get a chance to shovel it, somebody slips and falls.
Interesting.
You want to make sure that you're covered. I come in the office one day and I looked, the exit sign, the emergency exit sign
Yeah.
had dropped down. It was hanging, and I never forget. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh my God, if that thing's metal, if it fell and hit somebody, they could be hurt. And I would sue my contractor, but the people would sue me because the
Right.
contractor is the one that put it up. So I immediately had to call somebody to get them in there. But those type of things are things that you don't think about, that when you own a property, all of a sudden you have to think about.
Right.
If someone gets hurt on my property, I'm responsible for it. If my business is operating in that property, if you're leasing space, is it my responsibility versus the landlord's responsibility? You better
Right.
know, and you better make sure you're covered. The landlord's going to try to cover themselves, but you better make sure that you're covered also, just in case. Because as an attorney, if I'm representing a client who is suing for damages, I want to make sure I name everybody who I could possibly recover from, just in case the landlord doesn't have enough insurance to cover my damages. And the question becomes, well, can I get to the tenant too? I don't know, but I'm going to make sure that I bring them into that lawsuit just to make sure. So from that standpoint, yes, you want to carry that. And I've been carrying it ever since I've owned the building. And I was
Right.
carrying a form of general liability insurance when I was leasing my former office.
Interesting. On my side of things, since my business is set up digitally,
Mhm.
I don't have nearly as many issues to deal with any persons on property. Like, I don't invite anyone into my virtual office. um, but the depending on what the policy entails as far as damages, because there is a part of it that talks about property liability insurance,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering how loose property can be as far as the term of property. I'm sorry, product, not property,
Oh,
product.
you're talking about products
Yeah,
liability.
product liability. Yeah.
Now that's
So
a different monster. Generally they're talking about products that you would ingest, put on your body, things that you would use, but
okay,
we're in that space also online where you create online digital products, which is more information and education. And
exactly.
there is a form of insurance that you would carry as a consultant, because remember, you're giving advice.
And
And if
that we're
someone
gonna and
follows
that
your
we're gonna get
advice,
into. Yep.
yes, sir,
Yeah.
and that advice leads them down the wrong path, you want to make sure you're covered there. And that's something, even though you're doing it online, that is something that's been raised more and more frequently in the past. Remember, you're a business owner. More than likely, if you go into the court system versus a consumer, the courts are more inclined to lean toward the consumer if it comes to interpretation of the law,
Right.
and interpretation of your contracts, your disclaimers, anything else. They want to protect consumers, not business owners, from that standpoint. So you have to be very careful about protecting yourself in those situations. The other thing is, and you and I both know, many people who sell, first thing comes to my mind, products liability, is anything going on the skin, going in the mouth, going into the body, like supplements and stuff like that.
Right.
And
Consumables.
we know a lot
Yeah.
of people who are in that space. Well,
Yeah.
I was looking at an advertisement for a young lady that's local to me, and she was selling some type of tea or juice where she mixed it at home. She go to Walmart or one of these big box stores, buy a big thing of water,
Right.
mix the tea, put it in there. And so in my mind, the question becomes, when do you assume all that risk of that product? You've opened it, you've put it into a container, you don't know, you trust that the product is consumable and it won't hurt anybody, but you don't know. And then that company, I'm sure they're going to say that their liability ends at the moment that you open that package up and you adulterate the product. So those are things you definitely want to sit down and talk with your insurance representative about also, because you want to make sure that you're protected. God forbid somebody drinks something or put something on their skin and it makes them sick. You got a lot of
Mhm.
trouble on your hands. I was talking with my barber, as a matter of fact. You go to a lot of barber shops now, and You got the guys that put the stuff in the beard,
Yeah.
my mustache is gray. So, I could go in and get the whole mustache dark and, shoe polish black.
The Bijan treatment.
Yeah, the Bijan. I asked my barber, why didn't he do it? And he told me, he said, number one, because anytime we apply a product, he said, there's a process we're supposed to go through. We're supposed to test it to see in a small area to see if the person is allergic to it. And he was like, it's just too much risk in it for me for a few extra bucks. Somebody walks out of here fine, then they have an allergic reaction. Their throat swells up or something like that from me putting that stuff on their lip. What do you think's going to happen to you? You the lawyer. He calls me Madlock. He's like, you the lawyer, Madlock. What the hell do you think's going to happen to me? And I'm like, great point. So not trying to scare anybody, but these are the types of things, the types of questions that come up. And the best person to answer those questions are going to be your insurance agents, the insurance brokers, the people that you sit down with, that you buy your insurance from. And I hope you're on a first name basis with them and you visit them and talk to them about your plans and dreams so that they can help you protect what you're building. Tim, I want to say this too, because you and I, we've kind of run into the same thing with consulting and coaching people along at times too. The questions always come up, well, I don't want to spend that money, or the issue comes, I don't want to spend that money on it, on insurance. That's a waste of money. Mm-hmm. As a business owner, we have to think more in terms of investment versus spending. If you're working on building and protecting, then that's investing. If you're talking about covering, if you're talking about trying to fix a mistake that's already happened, that's when you're spending. When you're trying to play catch up and you're already in trouble, you're wasting and spending at that point. So for me, it's not an issue of, do you think I need insurance? My thing is going to always be to tell you, go sit down and talk with someone, get a consultation, pay them if you have to, share with them exactly what you're doing. Don't hold back so that they can give you the benefit of their expertise. Ask the hard questions and let them give you honest answers, because the worst thing in the world to do is to look up and realize you made a mistake, or to look up and see that you're being sued and know that you don't have a policy or anything to give them or that would protect you, because these people are going to start coming after your personal assets, your home, your kids' college fund, everything that you've worked so hard to build now comes into play. And they're going to try to find, lawyers are creative. They're going to try to find ways to break in and get whatever it takes to cover their clients' damages, because that's how they get paid.
That's true. Just so everyone knows, this man is big on proper business structure. So that might come through in some of this conversation. I'm just letting you know. Let's jump into the second one, professional liability insurance. So it says that professional liability insurance helps cover claims related to mistakes in the professional service that your business provides. Let's say you're an accounting firm, makes a mistake on a customer's financial statement and they have to pay a penalty. If they sue your business, professional liability insurance can cover your legal costs. Investing in this coverage can help you save money in claim costs. This coverage is also known as errors and omission insurance, or E&O insurance. Now, I know that this type of insurance can be spread across a bunch of different industries, because the whole thing of professional liability insurance can cover products and services. The example that it provides on the site, I think, is a really good one of thinking of something that you may or may not be directly related to, but it might have been caused on your watch. I think that's kind of interesting that this is one of the policies that came up, simply because it's not necessarily an umbrella policy type of insurance, but more so one that kind of helps with the thing that you didn't see coming type of policy. Do you feel that it's along those lines? Do you have a different opinion? Like, what's your feeling on it?
I think you're spot on about that. I told you, I carry malpractice insurance, and I carry a lot of it because mistakes
is malpractice insurance kind of like E&O?
Yeah, it's professional. Yeah, it's professional liability insurance is what it
Cool.
is.
Yeah.
It's covering mistakes, errors, omissions that you make in the course of applying your craft or your profession.
Mhm.
So whether you're an attorney, you're a doctor, you're a barber, a cosmetologist, doesn't make a difference. Mistakes happen. That was one of the first things we learned is it's the practice of law, not the science. Meaning it's not finite.
Mhm.
People make mistakes. Sometimes you try things and they don't work. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be liable for the result. And it's very easy for a mistake to happen. I never forget one of the first things that scared the living daylights out of me is time computation.
Mm.
I was actually doing a favor for somebody and they needed help, with the judgment that they had. Judgment had been rendered against them, and they were trying to file a notice of claim of rights exemption, which basically said that they could claim certain things to be exempt from that judge, from being seized to satisfy the judgment. And you calculate the time for it. It had a specific time on the form that you calculate from the date of the judgment. You had to from the date that you're served with the judgment to enter that form, get it clocked in with the clerk of court's office. And we calculated the time on it, but a holiday came up in between, and it was an issue. The question became, should that holiday have counted or not? And technically it was supposed to, and we didn't. And so all of a sudden, and it wasn't a huge amount of money, I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000, but either way, I called my malpractice insurance agent, and he kind of laughed. He's like, this is a common thing. He said, actually, there's an exception in the law for it because it's a computational error and you caught it early. And so with that, even though it didn't cost me any extra money, I was so glad that I had that person to call out to, and
Right.
they had seen it before. So for me, it's kind of like, I already knew that it was important to have it, but that just reiterated it for me. It's like, oh my God, because for me, it wasn't so much the amount of money, but it's the fact that, okay, I may have made a mistake on this. Now, I made two mistakes. One, I did a favor for somebody that I shouldn't have done a favor for because I didn't get paid to do that. As a matter of fact, they kind of dropped it on me.
Yeah.
And it was one of those type things where I had to learn to tell people, no, I'm not doing that. Come through my office, hire me, have my staff, because actually my paralegal would have probably caught that, the computation error. She would have caught that before I did. And so from that standpoint, it just reminded me, Tom, make sure you're covered. Make sure that, you're on a first name basis with your folks. Whenever they say, every year when it's time to renew, we don't play around with that. That's first and foremost. We're making sure. And the other thing is, I try not to do anything outside the purview of what my policy covers, just to make sure, because I don't want I don't want any problems. That's why this is for educational purposes only. I'm not giving legal advice. The only advice I would give, because I only practice law in the state of North Carolina, is speak with an attorney or a licensed insurance agent or insurance professional in your jurisdiction about your personal situation to make sure that you're covered. That's it.
One of the ones that came up, and this is the third one that I thought was interesting because of us kind of moving out of the pandemic and into a endemic. Is that what it's called?
I think so.
Yeah, whatever demic it is, this one kind of applies to that. Business income coverage. So business income coverage, also known as business interruption insurance, can help replace lost income if you can't operate because of covered property damage. This includes damages from fires, storms, or theft. Actually, I kind of read a little bit ahead of that, but either way, it still kind of fits a little bit depending on your situation. I was thinking more pandemic, but this is more damage to your entity. So yeah, I think this also kind of covered the whole thing of loss of income from a natural disaster. Because I think this kind of lent into the PPP that recently came through during the whole thing of the height of the pandemic. A lot of entrepreneurs that I knew during the time of the pandemic took advantage of the ability to recoup their losses. While that wasn't a insurance policy thing, it was a program that kind of lends into the whole thing of what this policy can be. So that's the distinction right there. With the whole thing of business income coverage, this, in your opinion, is mostly brick and mortar, right? Or can this go into other
Well, for me,
Um,
I'm looking at it from the standpoint, and I may, because again, I'm not an insurance professional, so you would definitely want to talk with a professional about what you actually call it. But I do know that you can insure vital employees in your business, because let's say that you have an assistant, even if you're not a brick and mortar business, you may have a virtual assistant or somebody who works very closely with you, and they're vital
that's
to
that's
making
yeah,
sure that your
yeah,
business continues to run. Suppose they get sick. Well, if you've got a policy, covering them, some type of long-term illness, and this is a policy to benefit you, not for their benefit, but for yours. It's going to sound a little rough here, but as a business owner, you've got to think ahead and outside of the box about keeping that business running. So if you got a vital employee that goes down, that, God forbid they pass away abruptly, you're going to be set back. So if there's a policy in place that you can collect from, you may be able to take that funding and use it to kind of offset the profits you're going to lose, the money you're going to spend in the process of hiring and training a new person. So that can become vital. As a matter of fact, I think it was a few years back, may have been 60 Minutes of one of those similar news programs where they talked about like the big box companies like Walmart and Target and some of these places, how
yeah.
they actually did that. And a lot of people were appalled because when the people passed or something like that, they were appalled, and they were thinking, well, this money should go to the family of that employee. It's like, no, this is a business insurance that's designed to help protect that business. And
Mm,
you and I, as small business owners, we have the right to do the same thing. And it can be extremely, important or critical that you do that if you've got someone that you rely upon as a vital human resource in your business. Doesn't matter if it's brick and mortar, online, anything in between.
right.
As that business owner, you want to make sure that it's your responsibility that everything continues to run regardless of the circumstances around it.
And this leads us into the fourth one, which you alluded to earlier. So I thought that was kind of cool. Commercial property insurance. So this insurance helps protect your owned or rented building and equipment used to operate. So if someone breaks into your building and steals your business computers, commercial property insurance can help cover the replacement costs. So this kind of falls along the lines of your sign that was a bit askew on the outside
Yeah.
of the building. But if that ended up turning into, this is the way I'm interpreting it. If it turned into where let's see, I guess if someone went and kicked the door, I'm just taking a stab at it. Let's see, help
Well, the
protect your
biggest thing
owned or
with your
rented building and
commercial
equipment.
property. So if you've got,
Yeah.
let's say that you're a contractor and you own and operate bulldozers, things like that. If your
Yep.
commercial property is damaged or something like that, you can't do the work that you need to do. Going out
Okay.
and buying a brand new Caterpillar, a Bobcat, or one of these bulldozers, something like that, may not be as easy as people think. It costs a lot of money. So
Right.
it would behoove you to have a policy to cover that. The first people to come to mind are independent truckers, truck drivers. A lot of times, if you've got one truck and that's your business and your truck goes down, you're screwed. And so you want to make sure that you've got not just, the insurance to put your truck on the road, but insurance to cover your truck breaking down, because it's commercial property that you use to actually make your money or do the job or do the work to earn the money. And so you want to make sure that's covered in case something happens to it. Good friend of mine, we're sitting in court, and he had just started a trucking business. And I never forget, he had a guy driving his trucks. And in Durham, North Carolina, there's a particular spot they call the can opener. It's a low overpass.
Okay.
And about every 2 years,
I'm sorry, you say can opener?
they call it the can opener. Yeah, because
Okay.
every 2 years, a truck would drive up under it, and it's
And it
low
just takes
clearance.
off.
And just now, here's the thing: when that happens, you just lost the use of your truck.
Right.
An engineer has to be called before the truck can be moved to check to see if it's safe to even move the truck, because that overpass may collapse.
Right.
You're getting a hefty bill all the way around. Plus, you don't even have the use of the truck to use it to try to start making this money you're going to have to pay back. And I never forget, we're sitting in court when it happened. And I'm like, oh my God, which one of the reasons I was thinking about going, getting a fleet of trucks at one point. I was like, nah, screw that. I don't need that type of headache. But that's one of those things. So, his commercial policy would cover his truck, but then he
Right.
also has policies to cover the damage his driver just did to that overpass. Now, the other thing is too, he's probably got insurance to cover the driver if the driver's injured. He better. So all these things come into play, which is why, again, I said, number one, get some damn insurance. Number two, sit down and talk with your insurance provider. Be honest with them. Don't try to hide stuff from them. You are a business owner. Be clear, concise, give them the vision. Let them know, tell them all the crazy stuff you're thinking about doing and let them guide you on how to protect yourself in case anything happens. Because if I'm starting my own trucking company, the last thing I'm thinking is that one of my drivers is going to go and wedge my truck up under a low clearance overpass. But it happened. It happened in real time.
Oh man,
I'm like,
if I could find the video, I'm gonna try to see if I could find it. There's a video of this one low bridge that all these trucks keep getting stuck under.
They probably
And
call
it's
that the can opener too.
Yep. It's probably I'll be surprised if it's the same thing, but like I seen a compilation of all these trucks that get stopped in this one bridge. It's funny. I'll see if I could put that in the show notes. I'll see if I could dig that up. But that's a really awesome example. Number 5, and this kind of lends into what we were just talking about. So workers' compensation insurance. Workers' compensation insurance provides benefits to employees if they get a work-related injury or illness. For example, if an employee gets carpal tunnel syndrome from years of typing and poor ergonomics, the insurance can help pay for their treatment costs. Most states require businesses to have this coverage if they have employees. We alluded to this earlier in this conversation. And now with the whole thing with the truck, the can opener bridge thing, if the trucker gets injured or something like that. When I was an employee working in the gaming industry, we had signs everywhere of the workers' comp policy. So if we ever had to file a claim, we knew exactly who to call and how to submit the claim and all that type of stuff. In the DC metro area, I believe that anywhere there's some type of service being provided or anything that's inside of a place of business where a customer comes in and out, there's a requirement. I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't quote me. Please do your own homework and research. But I do remember when I was working at said game store, which I will not name the name of the game store. You already know what the game store is, people. They had signs everywhere to make sure that we knew that they had a workers' compensation policy in place in case you were to be injured on the job. And you alluded to that being something that's important. Like, why do you feel that? Well, I already know why you feel it's important, but for everyone that's listening, like, what's your insight on why that is particularly important? Oh, and I'll add this to it because this is talking about our world. So if we had a virtual employee, I guess it kind of answers the question if they're an employee, not a contractor. So never mind. Go ahead.
Employee versus contract, and that's a whole other conversation, but it's one that's worth having. So I'm glad you see how quickly it kind of grows, and you need to have someone on your team who can answer those questions for you. It may be your attorney. It may be your business attorney that advises you on your issues. It may be an employment attorney. But in any event, develop your team of experts that you can go to in your jurisdiction who are licensed and they're qualified so that they can help you in your planning. The workers' comp, number one, it's required. So right off the bat, you got to have it. And if you don't, and your state or your jurisdiction finds out that you don't, typically there's some pretty stiff penalties for it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, if someone gets injured during the course of work, and it does happen, you want to make sure that they're going to be compensated in a way that's going to help them, recover their health. Hopefully they'll be back to work. If not, it can become very contentious. If somebody, they've gotten hurt on the job working for you, and now they're, trying to fight you to get you to cover their expenses just so they can heal. you're gonna have more than just a workers' comp claim on your ass. You're gonna have some other employment related issues coming up also. So that's something, number one, it's required. Number two, it's just the right thing to do to make sure that you look out for folks. As a business owner, you do have a responsibility for those people who work for you, keeping them safe and out of harm's way if possible. And then if they are harmed, to help mitigate their damages.
Next, number 6 is commercial auto insurance, which we kind of alluded to earlier as well.
Same thing.
So commercial auto insurance helps cover property damage and bodily injury claims if you or an employee gets into an accident while driving a company-owned vehicle for business. So if your employee swerves off the road while making a delivery and hits a mailbox, the insurance can help pay for the damages. Since we kind of talked a little bit into that, I think we can move a bit forward because this next one.
We already talked about the can opener.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an extreme example, but it should illustrate it. So,
but it's a really good one. It's a really good one. So number 7 is data breach insurance. And before I read into this, this is something that in the internet world is a pretty big policy that's picked up because of the nature of business. So I just want to put that out there before I read it. So data breach insurance helps your business respond to a breach if personally identifiable information gets lost or stolen. It can help cover your costs to 1, notify impacted customers or clients, 2, run a public relations campaign to improve your business's reputation, 3, offer credit monitoring services. Some insurance companies may call this coverage cyber liability insurance. So there are some umbrella insurances that includes this as part of a policy. Of course, check your professionals to find out. But if you own a website and you have customer data, there's a good chance that this is something you might want to look into. And I know that there's a good bit of entrepreneurs inside of our WISE community that run into the world of creative services or e-commerce. You definitely have customer information, personal identifiable information, PII. So I hand it over to you.
Well, you're more versed in this area than I am, but there are some things that pop up, not just in the online world either. If you're operating and if you operate any type of terminal in your business where you collect people's credit card information, or maybe you write it down, because in the brick and mortar world, sometimes you'll have employees that write their information down and they store it, then they go back and run their credit card.
Right.
You're responsible for that. When during the protests from the fallout from George Floyd, there was a very, real chance that we were going to have, even in my little small town, there was going to be a demonstration, and we didn't know, nobody knew which way it was going to turn. So local law enforcement advised that all business owners shut down, and we did. And I never forget, we're going through kind of trying to secure everything, and the thought comes through my mind: credit card machine. If somebody breaks into that building and steals that credit card machine, I'm responsible for the information that's on that machine. How much is stored in there? Right. Can they actually go in and get my client's credit card numbers? And because I didn't secure it, would I be liable for it? Would the credit card company be liable for it? To make a long story short, Tom took the credit card machine home with him. And then the next week, Tom stopped using credit card machine. I signed up for LawPay services, which is a cloud-based service that's what they do. They're,
Yeah.
But even with that, every year I have to become PCI, PCI compliant.
Yeah.
I go through their training for PCI compliance to make sure that I understand the responsibilities of handling people's personal credit information and all that type of stuff. So it's vital. And you think about it, I think most people in the online space, the majority of them are using Stripe, they're using PayPal.
Yep.
And so you better find out, Stripe and PayPal are doing everything they can to protect themselves. You better make sure we better make sure we find out. I'm not going to say you, we better make sure that we find out what our responsibilities may be, because something happens and they can't get the Stripe and PayPal. Guess who they're going to come after?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
So the next one that we jump into, we kind of alluded to before, but we might have some thoughts on it. Number 8, commercial umbrella insurance. So commercial umbrella insurance extends the limits of certain liability policies that your business has. So if a claim cost exceeds your policy limits, commercial umbrella insurance can help cover the difference. Think about it as bankable insurance. That's the way that I kind of interpreted it, where if there is a claim that happens, but your claim is exhausted, then this can be like your kicker that comes in. And I know of one company that had to extend multiple policies. I won't name them, of course. But in the event of them going through their troubles, they had to go through one policy, and once that one was exhausted, then they moved into another to help cover some more costs and so on and so forth. And they were on the commercial side. They were in the brick and mortar side of businesses. So I definitely know from third party experience what that means to have something that is kind of a kicker policy that goes on top of what you currently serve.
It's kind of like in personal auto insurance and stuff like that. You have like in your own insurance, you'll carry the uninsured, underinsured policies.
Right.
Like they're kind of like umbrella policies, because what'll happen, let's say that we're in an accident and you hit me, cause damage. You've got a policy. You've got the whatever the state of the law requires you to cover the minimum policy limits. If it doesn't cover all of your damages, and you carry your own uninsured, underinsured, once you reach the policy limits of the person that damaged you, you can then turn around and invoke your uninsured, underinsured, your own policy to cover, or kind of to fill that gap and cover up, or help extend to make sure that you're covered. So it's kind of like that. Obviously, you're talking about on the commercial side of everything. And so for me, again, sit down and talk with your insurance professional in your jurisdiction, because that's an issue that needs to be raised also. How much, and suppose I don't have enough, how do I, make sure that I cover everything and fill in all those gaps and stuff to make sure that I am covered. And most people start complaining, well, this becomes expensive, but you're a business owner. Remember, it's not it's an investment in your business, and those investments, those expenses can be deductible. Talk with your tax professional about that part of it, but you need to anticipate you're going to make money. You're going to need deductions at some point anyway. Why not invest in things that are going to help you protect your wealth?
Exactly. Number 9, employee practice liability insurance. Employment practices liability insurance, also known as employees liability insurance, help protect your business from employee related claims. This includes claims of discrimination, sexual harassment, wrongful termination. I don't have any experience with this because I typically run a very, very light business. But when I was in the employee side of things, I have been in the conversations when these types of claims have happened, and they're nasty conversations. They're very nasty conversations. I've been in, I wouldn't call it a deposition. I'm not so sure what the exact term would be when they're asking me questions, but it felt like a deposition.
Were they written questions that they sent you?
No, like I was in a room.
You were in a room?
Yeah, and there was someone across.
They were interrogating you. Yeah,
there we go. We'll go with that. They interrogated me.
Was there a court reporter in there?
No.
Okay, I was gonna. His court reporters in there. It was probably a deposition, but sounds like they were at least interviewing you.
It was definitely. We'll go with the safe word and say interview.
Yeah, they were interviewing.
But definitely there was a claim that was made, and they were going to all the employees to ask, what was your perspective? What did you see? What were you aware of? Type questions and stuff. And it ended up being where that said company had to, they had to pay out, and not going into the particulars of that particular thing. The whole thing was, I imagine that might have been a part of a policy that they had, because this kind of reads into what that might have been.
Yeah, what it sounds like, and I'm not an expert in it by any means. So again, talk to your not tax professional, but insurance professional
Insurance
about it.
professional.
But the thing about it is, as an employee, as an employer, you have a responsibility for creating a safe and harassment-free work environment for your employees. So you can have an employee that's sexually harassing or some other form of harassing another employee. And depending on whether or not you had notice of what was going on or should have known, you could be responsible for the damage that's done to that employee that had been harassed. They may sue you for, operating a hostile work environment, even though you're just as nice as you can be to them. But because you didn't address the issue fast enough, and this is very real. This happens every single day, and it's very complex. There are federal laws and guidelines about how the process needs to be handled with human resources. And most small business owners, including myself, have very little training when it comes to human resources issues, what we can and what we can't say, what we should and what we shouldn't do when issues arrive or we notice things or things are brought to our attention, how to act, how to properly document it. All those things can be used against you. And if you're sued, you want to make sure that you've got something that will prevent you from having to come out of your pocket and pay damages in those situations. Because here you are trying to run a business. You got taxes to pay, payroll taxes, all these other things you're paying. You may not have the cash flow to just reach into your pocket and pay somebody's judgment where they've sued you for damages. So from that standpoint, you want to protect yourself at all costs.
Number 9. Number 10. We're almost through the list. So number 10, business owners policy, or known as BOP. And with this one, a business owner's policy is one of the most popular types of insurance because it combines general liability insurance, commercial property insurance, and business income insurance. So this one is a combined insurance policy. Since we talked about all of them at some point, we can go ahead and just say, if you don't know and you talk to a professional and say, well, this one will cover the basics, that sounds like that's what that one is. And then last is number 11, hazard insurance. So hazard insurance is described as small business hazard insurance is another name for commercial property insurance. It helps protect the owned or rented business property like the building and equipment. So I think that kind of lends closer to what I was talking about with the whole pandemic, because that would then be hazard. But this is the list that has some basic ideas of insurance policies that your business may need. Some of them you definitely want to check with I'm going to use Tom's language, proper jurisdiction.
Most definitely. Find a qualified professional in your jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Make sure they're licensed and qualified to advise you. Tom's air quotes and disclaimer that Tom don't want to be sued by anybody.
Thank you for that. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. Thank you for the question from the WISE community. Of course, you can go to NASB.com.
Great question. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, go to NASB.com /group if you're not there already. And just spelling that for everyone that's on the podcast side, NAASBI.com /group. Because this is some of the types of things that we don't have conversations about. Hello.
Thanks for my wife walking by and
hello, family. This is some of the things that we don't have some insight on, that we can just ask, and you never know how much of a talented group of people that we have that has this knowledge to share, or at least can point you in the right direction. And I want to thank you, Thomas, for taking the time, man. Always been one of the best when it comes to these things that I may know something about, but may know nothing about. And like, it was perfect to have you help talk through this. But guys, join the group and ask your questions. And if I don't know the answer, I will try to find somebody, preferably in the group, but I'll try to find someone that may be willing to have a conversation and just talk about it. Any parting words outside of get some damn insurance?
You know me so well, my brother. So well. Now, guys, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Join the WISE group. It's a wise decision if you hadn't already joined. And if you have joined, show up, participate, and get your questions answered, because it's not just you. Other people can benefit from learning the answers too. And we all grow by sharing. I don't want you to make mistakes that I made. You can go out and make new ones. And that way I can learn something from you too. But in any event, let's limit the mistakes as much as possible. And then the last thing is, don't be afraid to find people, to go out and find qualified people and make them a part of your team. They should be willing to answer your questions and sit down and talk to you on whatever level you need. I tell all my folks, talk to me on a third grade level, because that's about where my mind operates. I may ask the same question over and over again. I may want you to explain it 3 or 4 times, but I have to understand what it means and why I'm spending the money on this policy. But you best believe I'm going to get professional people who know what they're doing, and they've got insurance, because if they screw up, I'm suing them.
Perfect. The American way, people, the American way. So with that, thanks for watching and listening. My Biz Needs Help. If you're on YouTube, of course, subscribe, hit the alert button, so when a new episode goes up, you get notified. If you're in the podcast directory, subscribe there, so that way it'll download directly to your device of choice. More to come. We're just getting started. So the Wise community is built for you. It's my way of helping to forge the gap for our educating entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs alike. Because I know you're going to say, hey, I'm not an educating entrepreneur. It's like, no, you educate. You just don't know it yet.
You just don't.
So with that, be healthy, be wealthy, of course, be wise, because someone needs your help too. And with that, guys, I'll check you on the next show.